Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Nick Nova. I just came up with that name because I had nothing else to use, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to use it because it seems to be very well fitting. And for this episode of whatever the hell this is, a podcast, a vlog, the next Joe Rogan, who the hell knows? But I had KCB previously, and now I'm happy to say I'm joined by some old boys from, I say back in the day, and back in the day isn't really that long ago. But what we've got is, we do have the boys from 27Five3. I've got Paulie on the top left of your screen and Daniel in the bottom center. How are we, fellas? Paulie, I'll go to you first.
Good, Nick. How you going, mate?
Very well, thank you indeed. How have you guys been? Daniel, hey, what are you chugging on there? Tell me that's a West Coast cooler.
Gotta be West Coast, bro.
What is it with you guys and your West Coast coolers? Please tell me.
Have you had a West Coast in the best, man?
I had West Coast when I was 10 years old. That's when I had West Coast.
And you should start again. It's the best drink, man.
It brings back memories.
Start with. It's great to start with. It's I don't know.
Yeah, it's going on.
All right. First of all, how has lockdown been treating you? I mean, I've always wanted to have chats with people, and I think this has given me a good opportunity to have a chat with you blokes and many others, and I hope to have chats with many of others. But how has lockdown been for you two guys individually? Paul, I'll go to you first, and then Daniel. Like, has it affected you in any ways? Any gigs? I know we've all had gigs drop in and out on us. Like, what's it been for you blokes?
For me, it hasn't changed much at all. I'm still going to work. I'm still doing everything. Like, it's weird. The only thing I'm noticing is obviously going to work. There's not a lot of people, but for me, it hasn't changed at all. Everything's been the same. The only thing that I don't like is just, the fact that you're restricted going out to certain places. That was the only thing. But otherwise, work-wise, like during the week, it's been the same, man. It's been the same.
Yeah. Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same as Paul. Like, I'm still going to work, but except for me, like, it is a lot quieter at work, and that sucks. But man, it is what it is. But yeah, at least, like, for the most part, we still can go to work and do that stuff for the most part. So.
And I'm guessing you're continuing your collection.
The neighborhood that much.
Continuing your collection of synthesizers in the background there.
Yeah.
So many synths. I credit you on that. If there's one thing I wish I had, it was a lot more actual hardware. But maybe one day I'll actually start putting myself together and getting myself going on there. But in any case, let's get straight to it. The name 27Five3, I have an inkling as to its origins, but you blokes tell me, where did 27Five3 come from? Because you had a previous name before you made that change, which we'll get to later on. But first of all, 27Five3, what's that all about?
I mean, Paul would say the same thing, man. It's area codes where we're from. 2753, man, Richmond.
We grew up in Richmond. Everything's Richmond. Our original name was going to be 2753, but we changed it last minute. So not many people know that, but that was going to be our original name at the start of all this, and we changed it. We just thought, it was just DP, and then obviously it led to the other name, and we regretted that.
Yeah. I mean, at first it's just like, I don't know. We'll get into that later if you want to. But yeah, 2753 thing is just, it's more of like a call back to home.
I find it equivalent to the very terrible Hotmail address you first had as like a high schooler. You know what I mean? You had like some terrible bulldogs for life _69 or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like one of those names.
Oh, yeah. It was a bit like that. I mean, it's just funny because like back when we I don't know how far you wanted to go back, but like when we first started screwing around with tracks, it was like, DP Productions, because it's like Daniel and Paul. It's just what we did, and then it's just like, DP, and then we're like, it'd be funny if we just called it this. And then it took off, and we're like, fuck. So
that's it, mate. The horse bolted. It ran. It did the Kentucky Derby and everything, mate. It just went.
Yeah, honestly, it was an instant regret. Like it was bad. I was just like, shit, what have we done?
Look,
yeah,
we didn't know. it's going to turn out.
Yeah, it's just I look at it now and I do have a bit of a chuckle, and it's still part of it's like, oh, it's cringe, but you can have a bit of a laugh about it though.
Well, even me, I still have some of your older tracks from way ago, and I still have them called Double Penetration for those who haven't figured it out playing at home for the million dollar question for the answer, and that's where you first originated your name. And I get it, Daniel, double, and P, Paulie, penetration. It's funny, it works, but yeah, from a marketing standpoint, it's probably not ideal. It's probably not the smartest thing, I would say.
Yeah, but I think as well, we didn't really give. I mean, for the most part, like we didn't really. For the most part, didn't give a shit. Is the easiest way to put it. We're just make tunes, because at the time, like I don't know if you want to go down this tangent, but when we started out making music, like the whole thing is we didn't want to make tracks. We never wanted to make tracks. We just wanted to DJ. That's kind of how we started, and like Paul will tell you the same thing, man. We had no inclination of making music at all. We didn't want to. We're just like, oh, we want to DJ because we, have a lot of sick tracks we want to play. And I don't know. I'll let Paul tell his story too, I guess. But
that's exactly right. What happened was, when obviously I'm older than Daniel, so I was going to DCMs, and obviously we were going every weekend. And this is even before Daniel was 18. Yeah. And I wanted to DJ. I had tracks, and I was and then I couldn't get noticed. I DJ Idol came up, but when DJ Idol came up, we started making tracks. But I remember I was asking people, I was asking promoters, and no one wanted to look at me, give me a go, nothing. And obviously Daniel was into the scene then, and we started. Yeah, we got out there. We started stuffing around.
Get together. Sorry, I'm cutting him out. But we used to get together and hang out and stuff, especially when we got driving to and from the city, boys from the area. We go together and we always like crank mad tunes on in the car. Like, these are sick. Wow, like got to play them. They'd be mad to do that. And then we came to the thing of like, well, we both kind of DJ. We both have decks and stuff. I'm like, oh well, why don't we like really get your foot in the door? You gotta make tracks. You gotta make yourself a little bit different, And that's kind of where that started, I guess. Why we started making music in the first place, which was, I mean, everyone has a reason in the beginning. It's just, it's kind of how it was for us. We just kind of started making tracks out of necessity. It wasn't because we wanted to. We just figured we had to get your foot in the door. Like anyone big that was playing anywhere, they were making tracks. Like you look at your Alex or your Casey or whatever it is, that's pretty much what was the case. And your Energize or all those other guys as well.
Yeah, no, it does say something to that, but to the scene back in those days as well, because that's when I first started making my music, that mid to late 2000s, if you've heard the My Story series, which I still don't know what compelled me to do then, but I thought, you know what, I'll just do something just to tell my side of the story, and which is what we're doing right now. I want to hear, 2-7-5-3's side and why they got into it and that sort of thing, but it just takes me back as well, because everyone was playing sort of like the same music, and it sort of came to a point where, okay, this is getting a bit too much now. How do we still end up sort of like being relevant or being somebody without being exactly the same as everyone else? And the only other way is, well, I can mix, I can, DJ, I'll start making music, and that's evidently what you guys did. So I think from that will stem to, what year did you guys first start making music? And if you had no intention of it, were you guys musically trained? Did you have any experience in production before that? Or did everything just come to you just because you wanted to start like everything else, from a little seed, grows a flower?
I'll let Paul go first. Sorry about him.
Well, in 2000, we started in 2008. So it was 2008 when we started. Before that, I was making tracks. But I was using PlayStation. There was a game on PlayStation called Music 2000.
I remember
and
that.
I was literally making tracks off that. And I probably made about 10 tracks, even made a mega mix with those 10 tracks. And I put them on CDs and everything, gave them to my friends, and everyone loved it. And I was just like, I'm keen to look through, to continue doing this, but I wasn't fully into it. I was more into the DJing side. And then Daniel was the same. I think Daniel started DJ.
I was more on PC. I was like, you had like dance EJ and stuff, and the fact that I got that when I was younger, but EJ was a poor excuse of calling it a DAW. It was terrible. It was just like, you just drop things in there, and it's like, oh, it somehow works, but it wasn't really anything technical. But there was the inklings of that were there, and then even probably I think it was roughly around the time I got my first set of decks. I think it would have been 14 or 15. I remember chatting to one of the guys. I think it was, I can't remember if it was Light Sounds, the one in Parramatta, it was the one on Stone Creek Road. But the guy was saying like, oh, you can use like other programs like the Fruity Loops. The hell's Fruity Loops? And then I ended up finding a cracked copy of FL4. Well, I think it's.
Ooh, that's going way back. That's going way back now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was saying like I mucked around for a little bit then, and I was like, this is stupid. You kind of like I gave up on it too because it just seemed too complicated for me at the time, and then I'd play with it a little bit, get the shits, and just leave it, and I wouldn't play with it at all. Just focus on because I had decks at that point. I bought my first set of decks, so I was just on the decks, muck around mixing and stuff, and then eventually like FL6 came out or FL7 came out, and then we ended up using FL7 for quite like up until that point when we made the decision to start making music together. We had kind of like I think it would have been probably around 2008 actually. We started using FL7 originally, and we used FL7 up until probably I want to say maybe like 2009 midway maybe because it was when I started buying. When I bought my first hardware synthesizer, I bought the Virus TI, which is that one. That one? Yeah, that one, or whichever one. It's one of the ones there. And I bought that, and I bought FL9 to essentially kind of like, might as well buy a legit copy and do it properly. And we used FL9 up until last year. No, last year, the year before, when it was the first year of 2.7.5.3, essentially. I think it might have been 2018. And the only reason we switched is because our original studio computer died. The Audi computer, because how we got started was just this crappy computer that I bought. It was like the family computer. We bought it from Audi originally. It was shit. And to think about it, like when we were making tracks back then, it was like this shitty Audi computer hooked to a hi-fi system as like the amp essentially through like the little shitty mini jacks, like the headphone jacks. That's how we did it, man. It was just like in my room. That's what just using a crappy computer, just like VSTs and shit, just screwing around. That's how it was. And then eventually it was like, as it progressed, we were like, all right, we used that same computer for like 10 years, man. It served us so well. And then it died. So we ended up having to upgrade.
It had a good run. Paulie, I'll go to you on this one next. When it came to making the music, and you already had your experience when you were making it on PlayStation, I remember those games. I think there was also Parappa the Rapper and some other games like that. I think back then I would have been probably 11 or 12 years old, late 90s. Was it easy for you to adapt? Who caught on first more? Was it yourself or was it Daniel who caught on more with the production side? And knowing music structure and chord structure and progressions and notes and all that sort of stuff, because from my point of view, boys already know, I sort of had an idea of how to edit and put things together, but I had no musical sense in me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, Daniel like he said, he had the FL first. So when he first introduced me to FL, I had no idea what this thing was. And he was just flicking through and he showed me what he'd done. And he had like a basic structure put up. But I remember like the whole notes thing, like you had to get it in key. And a lot of the stuff wasn't in key. And then it was just from the Music 2000 side, like I know it's a game, but that was surprisingly, they had a lot of stuff on there. And I was making a lot of the stuff myself, my own kicks, my own like everything was done. And I'm equalizing all of it as well on a PlayStation. So then Daniel didn't really, we started doing that stuff on FL. And when I told him that stuff, he started playing around more often.
Massive.
And then,
he's gone Matrix on us.
Go again.
Weeks, whatever.
You went Matrix on us for a second.
And, he's slow. I'm like, fuck, I've got to learn, And he just, I don't know, he just picks up.
Yeah, you went Matrix on us for a second. I gotta love live technology, man. Do you want to give us again where you started getting the keys and all that notes and all that sort of stuff? I think the internet connection might be a bit how's it going? Yeah, I think his internet's a bit.
Yeah, he's internet.
Sorry, man. That's what happens when you live out the bush.
I'm leaving that in there because that's good quality humor. Yeah. So you're putting beats together, and you had to get things in key and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it was all. Yeah, all that stuff was. We had to do all that, and just I was just teaching him, like I was telling him how I used to do it, and like I said, I'll be gone, and then I'll come back in a couple of weeks, and he's done a shitload more, and I'm like, far out. This guy's like must be on it every day, just learning shit, and then got to a point where I come over once, and he was halfway through a track. I'm like, okay, Jesus, like, where'd you come from? Like, just picked up all this, and but back then it was. Like I listened to some of the tracks we made, and like they're really simple and really flat. But yeah,
it like you're talking about learning chord structures and stuff as well, and like really, we're not formally trained. Like my experience with music is just like you're screwing around a little bit when you're a kid on a little keyboard and just going nuts. That's as far as it went. And the same thing before, like we didn't really have any formal training. We were just making it up as we're going, learning as we're going. And then like as you progress and you kind of learn more and more and you come across it, like same thing. We listen to like the first tracks we made. And occasionally we'll do that, like we've gone and done that in the past. We'll sit there and listen to like one of the first tracks we made, like this is shit. Because it's just like basic as hell. There's nothing in it. It sounds flat. There's nothing. We didn't know anything about equalization, didn't know much about layering and all that other stuff, and just learning other techniques and stuff. And back then, like you kind of like, because everything we tend to do was self-taught. You just kind of, it's all by experimentation, and a lot of stuff that I regret. I'm like, fuck, if I paid attention more, I would have come a long way further by now. But it's the way it goes.
It's one of the things my shortcomings was on not learning enough of structures and chord progressions and all that sort of stuff. And I think that set me back a little bit because I started to get into a bit of a track that was getting me in the right direction, but other circumstances or maybe things that I probably thought maybe didn't go my way ultimately halted my sort of progress into music production. I stopped for a good 5-6 years and then got back into it later on. And man, the amount of stuff that I had to learn again from non-use of audio programs, chords, scales, minor, major, fifths, all that sort of stuff. Like I wasn't the best with it to begin with. I'm still not. Like if you play a chord for me, like what chord is it? I'm saying, let me see what keys you got on the keyboard there, because I still I won't know. I have to actually look at it and say, okay, I can't memorize the keys off the top of my head. I still need to go, okay, well there's middle C, so that's so that's an A, and I still have to do that. And people freak out. They're like, man, you make such banging tracks, like, what did you do to learn? And it's just, I just adapted myself. I just wanted to learn. I just said, I want to do this. How do I do it? Tutorials, asking other people, just trying to pick up as much knowledge as I can, speaking to the likes of Energize, who was a big influence of mine, and probably is of yours as well, because he was around the same time when we sort of like came out and came together. And the production back then, as you say, everyone listens to their first tracks, and no matter how good you are, no matter how good it was at the time, you listen back and you'll say it was absolute crap. Like even Casey, for example, when I had a chat with him, he mentioned how he did a super quick tempo. Needless, he didn't even put together the fact that he actually made Be With You first, and he actually said if you listen, he actually made it through an analog mixer, like actual mixer. All the channels were set, the EQs and all that sort of stuff, but he goes, there was nothing really in there. And my question, like it was with Casey's, with the progression of music, as you've been making music along the way, what have you noticed change from when you first started it to now? Because my question to him was, can you make a banging track on a laptop anywhere around the world and have a #1 hit? Which evidently is yes, because The Weeknd apparently produced his big hits on a laptop, and you've got Tiesto making tracks on planes, you've got Van Buren, Ben Nicky, and all these other guys. But because you still use hard synths, I want to know, how heavy is your music featured with actual synthesizers, or do you go to the VSTs?
Look, I think a lot of it, I'll take the answer from this one because I have it all here anyway. It's all technical stuff. I'll go into as little or as much detail as you want, but essentially, like I agree. You can make anything with less. I know we've literally done tracks on laptops too. When we went to England back when we played the Pleasure Rooms, we did like a series of tracks we literally made in our apartment before the gig. Like we did that. Like we did that there on the laptop. I actually borrowed Paul's laptop at the time because he left his laptop. So I take the laptop, we'll do it, and we just did it. We did it then and there. We're watching. I think it was like Sunday League or whatever it was at the time, and we're just sitting there putting together like Drop It 2009 or what, I can't remember what it was. Doing stuff like that. But and then you look at like the progression that we've had over the years to going, how much hardware do we use? The truth is, a lot. We do use a lot of it, but we have our reasons for doing that too. Like you find that it's not necessarily, it's more and more as time has gone on for us, because it's like not necessarily that you can't do it, and we've done that. We've made tracks that are mostly just VSTs and it's all in the box as well. Like the thing is, you probably couldn't even tell. But I know for us, we like the idea of it, because what we tend to like is we like old school sounding stuff. And then what's the best way to sound old school? It's the same stuff they used back then. So we have like a lot of stuff that we've gone on, like, I can't remember which track it was. I think it might have been one of the skits ones we remade. I can't remember. But, you go through it and you got like old Rolands that literally is the stuff they used, and you can get the sound, pinpoint exactly what it is. Not just sounds almost the same, it's exactly the same one. And you can go through it, do it that way. And even when we put together stuff now and all our current tracks now and out of the years that have gone on, it's like, it's not necessarily, you'll find that there's not necessarily one thing that's just VSTs or just hardware. It's like you have like some of our bass lines will be, sometimes you'll have, the low end of the bass will be from like a Korg MS2000, or you're going to have some of our leads, it's going to be probably a Virus TI, the Novation Supernova, and possibly the JP8000. It could be like all of them thrown together, and you wouldn't even know, because there's like so many different layers. We layer everything there. That's
everything's layered. Everything.
Everything's layered. That's like, if you want my tips, layer it, everything layered, and sidechain the shit out of everything.
We've noticed, but before I go to you, Paul, on this one here on the production side, on what you use, Charlie and myself, we play at the Albion in Parramatta regularly. Well, as regularly as we possibly can when we're allowed out of our houses to actually have fun as human beings. But when we play, we always play your tracks. Drew Koenig plays your tracks as well. I think he played it on a couple of cruises a couple of months back. I think he played Touch Me, and I think he might have also dropped Silence or something. If you guys did Silence, I'm not sure, but Touch Me definitely. Damage. Sorry. And also Turn Me On, the remix that your remix of Turn Me On when it came out, and Lose Control as well. And you can just hear when that riff and the melodies kick in, the side chaining is right in there. And it, again, personally, there is no right or wrong way on how to make music. If you make something and you think it sounds good to your capabilities, to as good as you can make it, and if you think this is how I want it to sound, then you go right on ahead with it. Because I think production these days, a lot of people try and keep up with who's got the big tracks at the moment, and I'm guilty of doing that. When I was younger, I probably still am in a way. I've heard something in this, I need to do exactly the same thing. I've heard something in that, I need to do the exactly same thing. I'm not really creating anything that's my own. I'm making a Frankenstein of a track that I'm going to call my own. You know what I mean? I'm not going to call it, it's Nick Nova. It's like Nick Nova's Frankenstein. That's what it is. Get a bit from this, bit from there, bit from there. So, Paul, with you guys, when you hear things, do you hear things and say, we need to recreate that? Or do you say, we need to make something similar, but make it our own?
We need to make it sound similar, but our own. That's what we do. I don't, you've probably seen on our Facebook page, we're not big fans of donkovers. I understand, if you're a beginner, different story. I get it. Everyone's done it. I get it. If you're a beginner, crank the donkovers. I get it. But yeah, like at the start, I think that's the number one thing. I'll hear something and I'll be like, I think we can do this. But what I hear is, the first thing I hear is the a cappella or the vocals. Like, I'll listen to the vocals. If I'm liking the vocals and I think we can do something with these vocals, I'll bring it towards Daniel and get his opinion on it. But it's always like that. It's never, we'll have respect for the original track, but yet do our own. You know what I mean? So, if riff-wise or something, we might use it, the original one, in ours, but that won't be the main riff. sort of thing as an example. Yeah.
I think actually probably a good example was when we did. I think it was "This Is Your Night," and we did. We pumped out you hear like the little bit of the original riff, and we used the original synths for that too. We have like a James.
That's right. Yeah.
Like we use a little bit of that in there, and we actually pump out the original riff in one small section. But we bring coming with the trance chords for everything else. It's like we just, you want to kind of put your own stamp on it. But for the same thing with us, it's like we always kind of like, well, we want to make what we think would sound mad. And I remember when we were making that track, and I said to Paul, I'm like, let's just do this track, but make it not as cheesy. And then he's just like, how?
It's hard. With the older tracks, that's very hard.
Very hard to make it.
You're trying to make something completely different, and you've got Play-Doh in front of you, and you're like, okay, I'm trying to make something that's not Play-Doh, but at the end of the day, you got Play-Doh. You know, what I mean, there's only so much you can do with it. So in saying that, with the production side, who is the instigator amongst you two? Who says we need to do this track, or I've got an idea, or let me get the virus set up, and let's make some new leads and some synths and things like that? Who's the person who is more productive or says let's get going when it comes to making music?
I think it's me. I think it's me. I think I'll think of the idea, I'll listen to the vocals, I'll get an idea, and then I'm straight on the phone to Daniel, and I'll send him a link or something and say, listen to this, what do you think of this? If he hates it, we don't do it. We've always been like, it's weird, but like if I'm really liking,
yeah, we're normally on the same wavelength, and we're very, very much like an old married couple in that respect. It's like usually you can meet up, and it's like if I have an idea of like, oh, I've got an idea of doing this, and most of the time when I have an idea, it's usually something ridiculous. It's like when we did the boats and hose thing with Repeat as a laugh, and he's just like, oh my god, and I'm like, yeah, it's funny.
That's a brilliant idea.
Like he'll come to me with something, and I'll come to him. And usually, most of the time we meet up and just do, huh?
That's a brilliant idea. That Repeated Love with the boats and hose. That was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I want to say, when it comes to gigging around Sydney, give me some of the places you used to play regularly or have played, and then tell me. I want to know the story. I think you might have told me, or roughly around. I want to know the story of how you two blokes out of, Western Sydney ended up in Liverpool, like Bound Central in England in the late 2000s. How did that come about?
Do you want to, I don't know if you, Paul, do you want to take this one in terms of like the Sydney stuff? Because like Sydney, we
all right.
didn't really.
In the Sydney stuff, with the Sydney stuff, it was, we played at Havana, Dragonfly or Tunnel. We played at Art House, and a lot of the times it was at Havana, and that was the Sunset.
Actually, there was what was it? The Temple as well in King's Cross. Temple. We had that too.
Yeah. We played at the Bank once. There was an energy event at the Bank.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was that, but they were the Sunset events. So, wow, that was 2012, I think. And but before that, like, no one wanted anything to do with us. When we got, I'll tell you a funny story. Quick, I'll try and be quick. It was one night we're going to DCM's. Me and Daniel, friends, we're going to DCM's at Havana. That was at Havana, and we went there. And on the way there, we were discussing how upset we were at how much DCM's has changed, and like the same tracks are getting played, and we were just like, I hope they don't play this track. And literally, we probably named like about 10 to 15 tracks on the way there. Anyway, and once we got there, and we're there, and I remember the DJ. I'm not going to say who, but I remember the DJ. And this specific DJ came on, and out of those tracks that we discussed, he probably played like 10 in a row.
Wow.
Of all these tracks, and we were just like, oh my god! And I was fuming. I have to admit, I was a bit tipsy, and I was fuming. I was like, what's going on? They're playing the same shit. I'm sick of hearing it. And then I just said, I remember I just said to Daniel, I'm going for a walk, and I just snapped it, and I walked off, and I went to George Mihailovsky, and I walked up to him, and I said, I got to speak to you. Can I please speak to you? And he was so funny. He put a cigarette in his mouth, lit it, and said, walk with me. We went outside, And he goes, what's going on? Like, and I just introduced myself. I'm Paul. I'm this. And then I told him, you know, me and my mate, we make tracks. We've actually, you know, we've got a gig in England and this, that. And then he was very interested, and it was good. And then, you know, he said to me, email me a mix. So we did that. The next day, me and Daniel got together, did a mix for him, emailed it. And then he listened to the mix and said, he called us in. And actually, Nick, that's when you were there too, when we did that photo shoot with Danny P and all that.
Yeah, there was a few moments where we did things like that together. Actually, I do recall some old flyers and things like that. Yeah, you guys did play a few times, I do recall, yeah.
Yeah, we were there, and actually George called me before then. He goes, "Oh, I want you to come on Thursday." And he was like, "So which ones is like this mix? Which is your tracks?" And we're like, "All of them." All of them. And he's like, "Fuck off! Are they all your tracks?" I said, "All of them." Yeah, and he's like, "All right, come in Thursday, we'll discuss it." And that's how we got into the Sydney thing. Like, he introduced us to everyone, and yeah, I happened to know Glenn beforehand through a friend. And he was giving me tracks beforehand, before I was producing or anything. And so I've met him before, and yeah, it was that's how I got the Sydney thing. But the whole England thing, I'll let Daniel discuss that, talk you through that.
Well, I mean, I think with the England stuff, it kind of just came out of like, because this is pre-Facebook. I think it's MySpace Music. I think that's where we first blew up. It's like, because you could have a little music on your page and shit, but if you had a MySpace music page, you could have like 4 or 5 tracks in there. So we just chucked tracks on there, and you know, back in the day, you throw whoever is on your top of your friends list or whatever it is. And then, as it turns out, one of the people we kind of added or whatever it was, because we used to listen to the Pleasure Rooms like avidly, especially when Alex was over there, and like because Pleasure Room used to live stream from the nightclub on Juice FM, which is a radio station in Liverpool.
Remember that? Loved Juice FM. Loved it.
Awesome.
Oh, man, unreal. So every Sunday we'd go out clubbing the night after, or even before I was even allowed to go clubbing because I was still underage at the time. But we used to wake up every Sunday, or even when I was allowed to club, you go, you know, you listen to every Sunday you wake up and be like, bang, Juice FM's on. They're gonna live stream to the Pleasure Room, 2 or 3 hours straight from the club, man. It was every track was banging shit you never heard before, and that's kind of like where we had come from originally, and that's the main reason why when we DJ'd, we were like, yeah, so much like British tracks and English tracks and all these things are just unreal, people never heard before, and no one was playing them. And we were like, oh, that's where the frustration came from inside, and that's where we were like, we've got to start making our own stuff to kind of be able to play this stuff, you know, because people need to hear it. It's unreal. There's so much good music out there and no one's hearing it. Like over here, I mean, over there you're hearing it all the time. But anyway, my story goes on. I'm not going to babble. You know, we ended up, you know, you add the Pleasure Rooms on it. It's like, oh, like it was the whole thing is for us, it was like our dream was always to play at DC. It was always to play at DC. And you always think to yourself, I'm like, that's the pinnacle of playing energy. The best place you can play is DC. And then, like, you add Pleasure Rooms and stuff. And as it turns out, one of the people we added or whatever it was Carl Gwynn. He was the guy, it was like one of the main guys. I think he actually owned the club for the Pleasure Rooms. And he was like, oh, your tracks are sick, send them to me, I'll play them. And we're like, okay. No word of a lie, the next week, we were listening to Juice FM, and he's playing our tracks. I'm like, holy shit! And it was just insane, man. And then from there, because Pleasure Rooms had a forum as well, it's kind of similar to what Dirty Donkeys and stuff, but they had their own club forum. But then it's kind of like, because most of the time people that weren't clubbing, like the forums would explode. What track's this? What track's this? Because that's how it was over there. It's like if you're playing something new, something never heard of, that was like the big thing. And then that's why for us, we kind of came out of the shadows, and especially over there, like we had a bigger record than here, obviously, but so there was like, oh, this track's like out of nowhere. Who made this?
So
yeah, and then it was after that, yeah, we just continuously it just took off from there.
So it was literally you guys making music. You heard the Pleasure Rooms. You dropped in the track in a forum. One of the guys happened to pick it up. He's like, "Yeah, this is mad. I'm gonna play it." And then again, it was just like, you know, green light and let's just go. And that was it. Like you gained popularity over there. I'm guessing like they were playing it in the nightclubs. They were playing it on Juice FM as well. And it's like, how the hell do these guys who, no disrespect, what I'm about to say may come across as a little bit gronkish, but like for me anyway at the time, how do these guys who are unknowns within their own city end up in Liverpool, in the bounce capital of the world? Like, how the hell, like, that for me, like, I'll give you guys a clap. Like, that is just amazing. If I had that drive and determination that you guys had, holy shit, man, I probably wouldn't, I would be like, you know, both of us would be levels above right now if we just kept on going.
Well, I think that's kind of how it was, man. It was like, I think that's why in a way, when we end up, and that's when I think when Paul ended up getting frustrated too, because you think about it, like, we already had the gig teed up for England. We hadn't left yet. And it's like, that's why I think we were slightly frustrated, because it's like, you know, we have such this kind of like, I guess a bit of the fan base, because at that time it wasn't just him, it was like a lot of the other residents. You had Rob Kane playing in his like Blonde series and stuff. They're all playing and stuff. So many residents, you got like, I think it was Carl, Rob Kane, I think you had Lee Hardy as well, JL. There was a lot of people playing it. And it wasn't even just, like, a lot of our stuff was pleasure room stuff. Like, just, we ended up doing like more.
We can pair as well.
Yeah, we can peak. Yeah.
So we had that too. And that's why it's kind of like we were a little bit frustrated, because it's like, you know, no one knows our music here, and it's kind of like, it's like, and we're boys from the neighborhood. And it's kind of funny in that respect, because to the most part, people thought we were British. Like, when we played our first gig in Sydney, everyone's like, I think even on the thing they even said pleasure rooms on there. I'm like, but we're from Richmond. I'm like, even KCB, man, he's like, oh, like, he legitimately thought we were from England. I'm like, dude, I'm from the West. Like,
so we know the story. I mean, Paul, what were you thinking when they said, yeah, you're gonna go to England, you're gonna play over there? How long did you guys go for? And also, what was it like just to play in these clubs like Pleasure Room? You guys played at the Pleasure Rooms? Just quick nod, yes, no, yeah. So like, Pleasure Rooms, for those that don't know, I don't know exactly what it was like, but I would imagine it was something equivalent to like what DCM is or was to us here. Like, it's just energy, bounce capital, like, and you guys ended up playing there. Like, what was that like to just say, man, people in our backyard don't know us, but here we got people from England who are traveling near and far to come watch us play because of people playing our music. And this is before social media really took off as well. You got to remember that. So that's big, man. So what was it like for yourself when you were going there? What was the experience like just to say, man, we are in Liverpool, England, and we're playing to hundreds of people?
It didn't really kick in. So I already organised a trip with my mate. What was that, Daniel?
Remember the Friday night before? It was the week before, but we went out on a Friday night. We just walked around Liverpool on Friday night. Yeah, we'll get to that story. So
basically, I organised an overseas trip with my mate, and I said we're ending it in England because obviously we want to go watch the football. And my mate's a big Liverpool supporter, and I was telling Carl, like, we were talking on MSN because back then there was no Facebook or any bullshit like that. We were talking MSN. So on MSN, we're chatting away, and I said, oh, I'm going to be Liverpool. I'm going to get tickets to Anfield, blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, well, if you're going to be in Liverpool, like what date and all that? And he said, all right, done. I'm going to do an event, 7th birthday. That's it. You guys are playing. You're the headlining act. And I was just like, shit, all right. And then it didn't really kick in until we got there. I remember one Friday night we went and we thought, because Pleasure Rooms was on Friday nights as well. And we went there one Friday night, one of the Friday nights. I said, let's go and check it out. And we went in there and it wasn't as busy, but we went in there and the guards actually grabbed us and they said, can you come with us, please? And they took us in the back of the room there on the dance floor. And they said, oh, they wanted to check us. And we're like, what? They want to check us? And we're like, okay. And they got out our IDs and they were just like, who the fuck are these guys? And then literally Carl Gwynn was DJing and he must have saw us. And he got someone and someone just ran down and just grabbed the security guards and said, no, leave them. They're DJs. And they're like, oh, shit, sorry. And we were shitting ourselves. We were like, what the fuck? Like, those boys are big boys. Like, those young guys, man, they're some big boys. And we're just like, shit, we just wanted to check the club out. So then, yeah, but on the night, we were shitting ourselves. I remember catching the cab there, shitting ourselves. And then when we got there, the lineup, fuck, look, I couldn't breathe, man. The lineup was was the biggest lineup like they said they've ever had. So the 7th birthday, there's actually a picture of it. The Pleasure Room still use that picture today, and the lineup was out the door. And I'm telling you, Nick, no bullshit. It was 1 a.m., 2 a.m. So those clubs, they don't kick off till like 3, 4. We're the headlining act, and we're on at 3.
Ooh, wow.
So it's not like here, yeah. And I remember walking in, and it was just so packed, and I'm like, fuck, like this is busy as, like it's pumping, and it's not like Sydney, like it's blaring. You can't hear yourself think, and the music is not 143, 145 beats like here. It's 153, 155, like it's pounding, and we're just like shit. Like,
It's borderline happy hardcore, really, if you think about it.
it was quick. Like I loved it. I look back now. I look back now. It's a bit quick, but it was cool. But I remember going up on the stage and that, and looking out to the crowd. Because,
I ended up almost stacking it down that ladder, actually.
Yeah, there's a ladder. So the DJ box is right on the top of the roof, and you look down on everyone, and just looking at everyone, looking at you, and I'm just like shit. And not only that, we were pretty exclusive. Like we would look at the forums as well, and these guys, like it's not like Sydney. These guys, they're listening to your mixing, you know, like they're listening to your mixing, and you just fuck up once, and they're gonna badmouth the shit out of you. So we were just so nervous. And another fact, like that was our first gig. That was our first gig.
Proper gig together.
Club gig. That was our first gig ever.
So you guys never played
at a club.
Never played together. Didn't know what your lack of a better term repertoire was. No, okay, I know I'm gonna play these 3 tracks. I'll play these 3, and we'll make up the rest as we go. Nothing at all. It was just like on the fly.
Oh, we sort of discussed what we were gonna play, but yeah, it was like this was like we looked at each other and we're like, all right, I'll play 3 tracks, then you jump on and play 3 tracks, and we'll just take turns. But
okay.
So I'll ask you guys now with the music. As you said, it's 150 plus BPM, which is what the UK sound is. And even now till today, I've got people from the UK who listen to my music, and I listen to their music, and in my head I'm thinking like, your stuff is better than mine. Why the hell are you listening to my stuff? But then again, people have different sounds. Same with you blokes as well. You guys had it on Juice FM, playing it in the Pleasure Rooms, other clubs in Liverpool, in the UK, in other places as well. And people are loving your tracks. And the UK boys, Andy T, I think we've still got Bad Behaviour still out there. What was the other one? Macca from Scotland, who actually picked me out of a crowd and had me feature on Ian Redmond's Bounce Back Experience, which was fantastic. I mean, to have Ian Redmond, like, Ultra Beat, one half of Ultra Beat, talk about me and saying like,
one of the best, yep.
Proper rubber bass lines. Listen to this, Nick Nova. I'm down under Sydney. Proper rubber stomper bass line. Get it in ya. It's like, yeah, man. Ian Redmond's talking about me and shit, and it's like the music I think is picked up a lot overseas. Now the sound is different compared to what they play over there. So for you guys, what is your sound based on? Do you guys think you have a Sydney sound or you have a UK sound?
That's tough,
Daniel?
man. It's like I feel like it's kind of a blend between the both, because we love the England stuff so much. It's kind of like, at one stage it was like we're to England for Sydney and we're to Sydney for England. But we're just trying to find that blend in between. And in the end, I mean, we just make what we think sounds mad. So it's not like at the time in the early 2000s, like late or early 2012s, whatever, 2010s, but even late 2000s, it was like we were just kind of like, oh, we've got to try and kind of like do a little bit of that catering, and then it just in the end we're just like, let's just do what we think sounds good, like, and that's kind of what it is. And then that's why it's like we don't really care. We're not trying to say our sound is one or the other. We just kind of do what we do. We just want to go harder than what they were playing here. And then that's the same thing. We had the problem is like, oh, this stuff's a bit hard for here, and we still get a lot of shit from our own mates, because we have a lot of tracks that technically we didn't play because we kind of like, they're too hard to play for Sydney. Like, man, one of the best tracks, in my opinion, one of the best tracks we've ever finished was, I think, Warriors Dance, and we never played that in Sydney because it was like, it was too, feel like people would be like, "The fuck is this?" But I think the track planet, but it is what it is.
It's another thing, a good point you bring out there, because music, it used to be when you'd go to a nightclub and you wanted to hear something different. You didn't want to hear the same things you heard week in, week out. You went out, you went out and you're like, I wonder what this DJ is going to play now. I wonder what banger they're going to pull out of their crate now. You know, crate because of vinyls, all that sort of stuff. Then when people started making music in their home studios, you know, what track is this guy going to pull out today? And now that sort of allure is gone. You can have a banging track, you know, the vocal is tight, the bass lines are thumping, you know, the chords are cranking, it's lush, it's got piano and everything's in there, it's fantastic. But no one knows it, and they walk away from the dance floor. It's like, no, this is backwards. This is completely backwards. We used to go to clubs so we could hear new music, not the same crap we're listening to, or I say same crap, not literal crap, but as a generalization, we listen to the same things week in, week out. Why would I want to go to a club and hear the same thing I've heard in my car for the last 5 days straight, you know what I mean? Now you can't do that. Like, you have to make a track, promote it, get it out there. I think this sort of comes to like production and music trends today. You have to make a track, you have to pump it online on SoundCloud or Instagram or whatever, give it to some famous DJ who's playing at the moment. They've got their own mixes out, and it grows from them. It's like no one actually cares to know what you've made that's new. It's only once it sort of becomes familiar, that's when it becomes big. Like a perfect example, like Sunset Brothers with I'm Feeling It. Originally was done in 2013, 2014, and only, last couple of years it's gone massive. Now, that could have been, just the diamond in the rough. It's just one track is all it takes to get yourself out there. And KCB said something similar. He said, like, this is where the gold is, and you're digging, and you get so close, and you think, what the hell am I doing? I'm just going to give up, and you walk away. But it was right there, you know what I mean? So you got to keep on plugging. So with music today, the attention spans are gone from patrons. Let's be real here. Like, you really need to tighten up your tracks. You can't do 6-minute tracks anymore. Production as well. We just discussed it earlier. You still have VSTs, you got synthesizers, and I applaud you for that. I wish I had a collection of VSTs right behind me that I could say, today I'm going to use the JP8. I want the Roland. Nah, today I'm going to use the Yamaha. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to do that, but I just don't have the physical ability or the know-how to do it, and you guys can. But if it came to, would you guys be comfortable leaving all the VSTs behind, hardware behind, and just sticking strictly to a VST off a PC or a laptop, or what's your go-to for your music in the future?
Look, I really don't think it makes a difference, man, because realistically, like, the way I've got everything wired in here, all of my stuff, like all of the hardware that we use basically like VSTs. It's all run through MIDI. The amount of cables I've got running through this place, you would not believe. So basically everything runs in and out. So it's like essentially the virus, and for the most part, the virus TI, because it runs off USB, you can use it more or less like a VST in there. You can use all the browsers and stuff in there. And a lot of other stuff, it's all like, once you hook everything up through MIDI and everything else has gone through there, all your filter cutoffs, you can do all that stuff through MIDI. It's the same. It's the same. It's just like using VSTs. But my whole thing is, when it comes over the years, I wanted to get more hands-on control, and that's why you get more synthesized. You want to do more kind of hands-on stuff, and you eventually go down that road because you want to get more in-depth yourself, and you want to learn more, and kind of like, that's how that sound's made, instead of just saying, that sounds sick, and just sitting there and flicking through a million presets, because everyone can do that. Everyone's going to sound the same. That's the same reason why we went down the road of going towards hardware, is because everyone these days can buy a file in, and they're all going to use like the factory bank, and everyone will just be sounding exactly the damn same. And we were like, when Taurus were doing it as well back in like the late 2000s, because that's all we had. You're going to go through there and you're going to try and find the new VST, whatever you had, or that came out that month, or new sound banks or whatever, just to sound different. And now it's like, I think a lot of people now are going down that road and trying to try different things, because one thing, hardware for the most part has gotten a little bit, like, you can get newer ones now that are cheaper. Like, you got a lot of the Grandeur stuff, and even a lot of the Roland boutique stuff. I have like 1 or 2 of them myself. And then, like, it's not a bad price for what it is, and especially like the 303, like the TB03 I have, we use the shitload of that. And it's just because it's like, it's more or less like the original one. I don't have 10 grand to spend on a real 303, and you couldn't tell the difference anyway. But it's like,
to be honest, you don't you don't need hardware. You don't need it.
You don't.
We like it.
We just like it.
And Daniel's, there's a big, but you don't need hardware. You don't need to. These days you can, Jesus, man, you can do everything on the laptop. Like, it's ridiculous. But the sound wise, we like the old school sound, and we wanted to, especially Daniel wanted to collect the old school sounds. And the only way to do that is not through the VSTs. Like, Pizzicato is not Nexus. It's we've got it. It's a completely different sound. When you've got the actual hardware, it's a roll. It's a completely different sound, and people don't know that. But in saying that, that's a producer's point of view. If you're just a normal energy DJ or energy fan, you're not going to pick that up. You won't tell the difference. That's also one flaw of being a producer is you're analyzing every freaking track that everyone plays, and you can hear, you're analyzing every little thing. And I don't know, as we progressed, that's what we were doing. And we were like especially Daniel was like, I want to get the original Pizzicato. I want to get that sound from the Prodigy. Yeah. I want to get, that Nick Skid sound. I want that. And they were all through hardware. All those guys use hardware. And it's really cool. Like, some of the sounds that you get from there, you can't get in VSTs. But in saying that, you don't need hardware to do this stuff. You don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, I first made some of my tracks that got released on LNG on a $400 Asus laptop using FL Studio, Nexus 2, and I think a Vengeance sample pack. Broken Bones. Yeah. My remix of Dave Austin and KCB's Broken Bones was made on a $400 Asus laptop using FL Studio version 19 or 20, whatever it was at the time. Nexus 2 and a little bit of Serum. Like, that's literally what it was made on. And you listen. That track, Nick, is amazing. See, and that's what I mean. You don't need hardware. You don't need that. Like, you've done it without that stuff. Yeah.
And 100%, you don't need it, man. Like, it's like like I said, when we started out, it was just a shitty Audi computer and a hi-fi system in a room, in the corner of a room. That's what we did.
And it got us a gig in England.
That's how you do it. Get a crap computer. Just have some idea of what you're doing. Give it to some DJs, and you'll make it big, man. You'll make it big. Daniel, I want to ask you an unfair question now. Is there, do you think, some music, up nose snobbery if there's a producer who uses hardware as opposed to producers who don't use hardware? I'm not saying this directly to you, but do you think there is a bit of snobbery of producers who still use hardware who think they're better than non-hardware users?
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, I've made tracks, like I said, I've made tracks myself using just VSTs, like, recently too. Sometimes I don't feel like hooking everything up. And I don't think it really makes a difference. There probably is a little bit of snobbery because some people will be like, oh, look what I've gotten. Like, you spend X amount on something and you want to show it off, and that's fair enough. But it's not even, like, I know, like, it depends what you can do with it. It's one thing, like, like, I've got, like the same with the Virus TI. It's expensive as shit. But if you don't know what the fuck you're doing with it, it's going to sound like a VST.
Yeah, it'll be a massive paperweight.
Yeah, and the same thing with the 303. Like, you can get a 303, and then, like, without, like, I ended up, because I have old guitar pedals, you put a distortion pedal on that thing, it's unreal. Like, but the thing is, if you just have a normal 303 using the little shitty distortions in there, it's just more what you can do with it. It's what you can do with what you have, and that's kind of where we came from originally as well. It's because, and even that's the same reason why I have so much respect for the guys making old school tracks, and that's why I wanted to do that and learn the old school way of using, step sequencing, using the old drum machines as well sometimes, because I have respect for these guys. Like, they basically burn the path for people like us that now just have software and you can do it that way. Even the old like doors, I guess, like I think Casey had mentioned it once about using like the old Atari Cubase and stuff. And that was, I've gone down those roads and looked into that and learned a little bit of that myself. And, you can have a bigger appreciation of what they do. And it's like, yeah, maybe for some people there might be a little bit of snobbery, but for me, I'm like, I respect the people that have been there before to do what they did. And I just wanted to, I know with me, I'm more about throwing back to those days and kind of like paying respects to the people that did it that way. Like, I'm not going to sit there and try and sequence everything off a TR-707. That's just going to be a pain in the ass. But it's there, and you kind of like, you're learning different ways of doing things, and the old drum machines, the whole way you used to have to sequence those, and trying to get shuffle times and everything right, and learning all that stuff. And I'm learning it. Like, the thing is, for me, if it interests me, I want to learn it. And if I'm learning every day. Like, it's always stuff that I feel like we're learning when we jump in the studio. And sometimes, like, I think it was the other night, like, I just got bored and I'm like, fuck it, I'm throwing the OBC because I'm going to sit there and make my own patches and shit. Like, that's kind of, for me, is like, I've progressed to the point of like, you kind of, where you want to learn to do more stuff yourself. Not that the fact that you have to, like, you just like, I want to learn how these people made all these old sounds on these old 80s records and stuff, and you want to learn how to do those things. And yeah.
No,
maybe it's just, like I said, I don't like, for me, I don't feel like it's a snob thing for me, but maybe some people do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the honesty, and like I said, I wish I knew how to use hardware. Granted, if I had one, I probably would know. It's just I have no idea where I would put it, and I'd probably get frustrated trying to make something in my head that I can make, but then when you actually apply it, in theory it works, but in practice you just want to pick up the thing and throw it against the wall. You know what I mean? Like that's where I would get.
That's exactly
Trying to program the TB303 the old-fashioned way. I've done it as well. Like, I forced myself to learn how to do it. Not that I usually do everything off MIDI now, so I can just punch it in on the piano roll and just run it that way. But try and do it through the step sequencer. Man, I have no idea how these guys did it.
Man, it's a credit to you two blokes for literally coming out of nowhere and showcasing to not just Sydney, but to England that, Aussie blokes can do it as well. And you know what? You guys haven't stopped making music. You're still making music now. Every week I see Friday night, there's a little video, new from the studio, bit of a slut house mix in whatever give me a quick one paragraph. Where did that pineapple slut house come from, please?
We love movies and TV, and it's obviously it just started as a joke, as everything with us always starts with a joke. We just have fucked up sense of humor. It was Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Like a 2-second clip in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and we're like, that's fucking hilarious. We need to just put that on. We put that on a track like thing, and it just became this whole thing. Yeah,
that's what it is. Something so simple.
Touch Me.
Something so simple. It's iconic now.
That's what
it's iconic.
Pretty much how it is, and it just became our thing. And I'm like, fuck it.
I love it. I need to get me one of them shirts so I can wear it around. People look at me like I'm some weirdo. I'm like, you just don't get it, mate. Yeah, you just don't get it, mate. You're just not from the 2753. Once again, I want to say thank you to you boys for taking some time out of your Friday evening to have a chat. Interesting discussions. I do thoroughly enjoy these, and the Liverpool story, man. Like, emailing some tracks over to a DJ from the pleasure rooms, and it's on Juice FM, and then you're playing there, and Sekis almost throw you out, and then you come back and you're billed as UK touring, and it's like, nah, man, we're like from out west here. Like, that shit to me is just funny, man. Like, that shit's amazing. But yeah, credit to you two blokes for keeping going, and you're still going as well. You're always making tracks, which is good, and your stuff is played, man. I play it, Charlie plays it, Drew plays it. I've heard it played at a lot of places, man. So it is getting played, and hopefully one day when all this crap clears, fingers crossed, we'll actually see you two together once again, and there is an appreciation for you blokes out there, believe me.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick, and thank you for playing the tracks as well. Like, obviously, that's all we want. We just want, like, this is our style. It's good.
Yeah,
playing the tracks. We love the fact of everyone. Go, Daniel. Okay. Fucking hell.
No, it's fine.
The fact is, like, we make the music for ourselves, but we love the fact that, we love hearing when people like them. We love seeing videos when people are dancing to it and stuff like that. Like that, those tracks make us happy. Most of them, some of them we fucking hate, but it's a good feeling seeing that stuff and knowing that, the people in our backyard in Sydney are they appreciate it. They like the music that we're playing, and we're making people happy as well, which is a bonus. It's a really good thing. And but to be honest, I appreciate you guys as well. Like, a fact is, I wasn't we had a big break until Forever Energy came in. As soon as Forever Energy came in, that sparked me again, and that sparked Daniel again. So
that got me as well. Like Dave called me up before all that, and he got me into. I blame Dave Austin for all this. If you have any grievances, take it up with him.
Yeah, no, that was a big fire starter. That was awesome, and everyone was involved. Like we're seeing Energize. He's like putting up samples and shit like. And we're like, oh fuck, like I'm psyched now. Like, let's get psyched. You know, Dave Austin, everyone's there, and it was So I thank you to you guys, because honestly, I think if Forever Energy didn't start, if you guys weren't doing gigs, posting up your live feeds and all that, I think like the energy side, I don't know if it would have got me again, to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
Paul had basically taken a break in like 2013, 14. Like he was just like he was over it, and I was like, I know with me, I just at the time like I was still making tracks, but I was just focusing on original stuff. But then Paul was like, he messaged me on like I think it was like 2018. He's like, wait man, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, screw around. You want to make tracks again? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, let's go. turn up the lappy, turn up the PC, crank it, let's get going. So I honestly do appreciate it, and thank you very much. And yeah, man, we'll keep banging the tracks. So long as you guys keep making them, we'll keep playing them, man. And man, some of those drops and those riffs and everything, man, those bass lines are just too good. But what I'm gonna say before I end this is you guys gotta do one thing, and I'll be very upset if this never happens for the rest of my life. Okay, one thing. You guys have to finish 1, 2, 10.
It's done.
1, 2, 10.
Years ago.
There's only like a 2-minute sample. What's going on? Where is the love? Why are you not sharing this with us?
You never asked.
Yes, I have. Go look at the SoundCloud comments, mate. You'll see.
Message me and go, hey bro, can you send me this track?
I want to hear 1, 2, 10. For those that don't know, it's the film that Macaulay Culkin's character Kevin watches in Home Alone when the guy snakes and I'm gonna give you the counter to 1, 2, 10. And he just starts spraying him with the bullets. That big old school banging track. Now I know how the hell you got those sounds using the actual synths. You cheeky buggers.
Yeah. Actually, a bit of trivia for you and people playing at home. That kind of little bass line from that and the actual bass line for the track is actually the same sound as Prodigy used on Funky Shit.
Well, there you go. There you go. You guys Prodigy.
Like I said, we're massive Prodigy fans. But it's like, and then there's obviously a little other hardware in there. But
that track's finished, Nick, so we'll send it over.
Fantastic. Mate, I want it. Mate, this is going to be long gone by the time I jump on, but send it to me right now because I'm jumping on live in about a half hour from when we're recording this, and I want to play it, all right? So make sure you do. But everyone else watching, hopefully you enjoyed the story of the boys. Where can they follow you guys? What social media can they get your stuff on?
Paul, you want to take this one?
Facebook, 27Five3 on Facebook and SoundCloud. We don't have Instagram. We don't have anything else. Like we're old school. Even Facebook's too much sometimes.
But it's not traditional 2753. You spell it in an odd way. Yeah,
it's TWO number 7, then FIVE and number 3.
Fantastic. So, thank you very much. The boys from 2753, formerly DP, Paulie and Daniel, thank you very much. And once again, I hope everyone enjoyed and look forward to the next one. Who's it going to be? I don't know. I might toss a coin or throw the 8 ball and see what it says I should do. So until next time, take care out there.